What's up, prospects? Coach Robbie
Coach Mandi.
here, ready to have probably one of the most exciting episodes of Turn by Turn that we've had, where 70% of your questions we will not be able to answer. We will do our best.
What we know is we don't know everything.
We will give everybody a couple of minutes to jump on, and then we will go ahead and get started. Go ahead and do us a favor. As you click on, go ahead and comment and let us know that you're here. Let us know where you're watching from. We've tried to pay a lot of attention to that so that we know kind of different regions, different teams, different, some of those travel coaches, Ron Schmitling,
Got the Missouri Bombers coaches. They watch up in Missouri.
Yeah.
You got Gil. Gil's always on.
We've tried to make sure we've actually got some things cooking to be able to include those guys in on some things that we're working on right now because they're continuously on and continuously involved. So make sure you comment and let us know where you're watching from. Give us a couple of minutes, and then we'll go ahead and kick it off. Ready to roll?
Let's do it. It's a big day. Big day in softball. In the softball world.
The big thing, which y'all can probably imagine, one of the best things about being in the position that we're in is a lot of times we find out about stuff first, and not that it's like, oh, who found out first? For that they knew it for a minute and a half before somebody else knew it. They're so cool. It's not that at all. It's naturally, a lot of people don't really consider a lot of the different hats that we have to wear. Being naturally, we have to know because we have to know what we can and can't do. We have to know so that we can turn around and advise our prospects. And when you've got prospects from the 2023 class all the way to the 2018 class, anytime there's any kind of changes, you have to advise on that. It also dictates how we're going to move forward with different kids. And then, it's not surprising, but
It's a big piece of our job is to know the rules and know the recruiting rules so that we can best help all of our athletes.
Yeah, and all together, aside from the rest of our scouts, just between us two, you'd have 5 handfuls of different coaches that have texted asking about the rules, and so
we're glad everybody's asking these questions, yes. But the truth is we know that we don't know everything yet.
Yes. And so y'all have seen it, everybody knew it was coming. Y'all have seen it, NFCA posted something shortly after the NCAA posted it to their site, and then shortly after that, the NFCA posted it. Shortly after that, Brent Eads with extra inning softball. If y'all aren't already, I would go ahead and go, after the show, obviously. Go to the NFCA softball page. Like their page, and then go up there to your updates and turn their updates to where you see them first, and do the same thing with extra inning softball, because with both of them, they have tried to do their best to cut through the, what do you want to call it, the unreadable content, the uninterpretable. Language is not my strong suit, but the uninterpretable content, extra innings softball with Brent actually published a thing that, you know, I hadn't even seen it, you know, but Mandi, you know, brought it to my attention where, you know, there's actually a little bit of discrepancy as to what everybody is posting versus the way that the NCAA worded some things. There are some things that are pretty standard, but there's also a couple of things that are uninterpretable right now.
Sure.
If there's one thing I know, one thing Mandi knows, this is nothing new. It's nothing new. Here's the best piece of advice I could give every one of y'all is read everything that's out there. Don't jump to any conclusions. You will see this is going to be a hot topic for the next couple of months, but you'll see in the next couple of days that the truth with a lot of this will come to light. And so a couple of those contradictory posts that are, you know, basically interpreting this as this and that as that, and then, you know, there's some vocabulary that's very, you know, Jeff Vallely with Tulsa Elite pointed out, you know, the definition of a PSA, you know, being, you know, first day of a high school career, you know, that, so technically this is a loophole.
Right, 7th and 8th graders technically aren't considered a PSA until their 9th grade year. So is that still the case? I don't know. I mean, what we do know for sure, concrete, is that this is D1 only.
Yes.
So D2 and D3 are not in the conversation.
Yep.
We do have D2 coaches that are at that recruiting stage. So,
and if you think it's crazy just for softball, like Mandi pointed out a little bit ago, like one of the things, you know, obviously we don't really acknowledge the fact that there are any other sports. You know, we know they exist. You know, obviously we have strong opinions about it. But like our national director of volleyball, Sheila, you know, was sending some stuff earlier, like, hey guys, you know, this is volleyball too, and going through a lot of the stuff, you know, and
yeah. So I think there's some other sports that are in the mix. This isn't just softball. There's I would say a handful.
Yeah.
4 to 5, I would guess, sports that are in this new recruiting talks at the D1 level.
And a lot of people haven't picked up on it yet, you know. But here's one of the things that you're not going to see written anywhere, but you know, it's kind of common knowledge, is the ultimate goal, which, you know, I find far-fetched, you know, but you know, if it happens, it happens. We'll roll with it. Is the NCAA would love if across the board they could unify when certain things are for every sport. You know, and that's kind of you see that with this one that passed, where we read it and we immediately go softball, blah, 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 you know, and then all of a sudden we've got 3 different scouts or 3 different directors from 3 different sports texting us going, hey, what's your interpretation? Because this part is going to be the same thing.
Right. There's kind of a blanket effect over all of the sports, which, good or bad, we all differ in the way we recruit. Each sport, each college coach is different within the sport. So, I mean, I don't know if a blanket approach to all of it is ever
the right way.
Is ever going to be the answer.
You can see it in our, and those of y'all that are watching that are high school teachers, please don't hate me when I say this. I know a lot of y'all agree with me. But you see it in our school system right now, where not every teacher not every kid learns the right way, or learns the same way. This kid learns better hands-on, this kid learns better this way. But the way the school system is set up is to teach the masses. And because of that, there's some kids who are bound to be huge contributors in society, successful, but they're not doing well in school. You know, some of the, you know, biggest, I hate to say it this way, but some of the most wealthiest people in the world right now were C+ students. You know, but it was, they went to school, they, you know, were being taught by the masses, and it didn't fit right. So, you know, long story short to that, here's the cookie of the situation for you to nibble on. Over the next day, you're going to see and hear a bunch of stuff on social media. Me and Mandi spent 30 minutes, being honest with you, laughing at some of the misguided information being posted on social media, some of it by a couple of college coaches. And I love those guys to death, but, you know, they should not have done that because they misinterpreted a couple of things really, really badly.
Right, because you got to stand behind what you say, and I want to be 100% sure I know what we're talking about before I go off and say something. I mean, here's the thing. Yes, early commits and early offers are going to go away, but let's not be confused that does not mean early recruiting isn't going to happen.
Exactly. That's the biggest thing.
That's not going to change, folks. Yes, you won't have the offers and you won't have the commits until junior year. But what happens freshman and sophomore year? They've got to be seen by coaches, because by the junior year, you want to have offers. It's not just going to start the junior year, and we're only talking about Division I. So,
So
early recruiting, it's a term that people are getting confused with. It's early offers and early commits.
Yes.
Recruiting is still going to happen.
So the basis, like Mandi just said, that here's what you need to know is either tomorrow we're actually going to make sure, and it's going to be comprehensive, but everything that we're including in it's going to be factual. Make sure that you're paying attention to mine and Mandi's Facebook pages. Make sure you're paying attention to the NSR softball page, because with the resources that we have, with the partners that we have a lot of the information right now, but turning around and posting a bunch of the stuff and turning around and doing a bunch of the stuff before a couple of the things, we don't want to give you half of the information. We want to give it to you all together.
Right.
The biggest thing, couple of biggest things that we know cannot be misinterpreted, and we want to make sure that all y'all do understand, is one of the questions that I think everybody on social media has been asking is if they are one of those underclassmen that has committed, how does this affect them, this, that, and the other? Here's the thing. Number one, that discussion should have been had between the prospect and the coach in January after NFCA.
Right.
Number two, sometime prior to that, the last several months, you should have had a conversation with your college coach that you're committed, and this is 2020, 2021.
Right. Sophomore and younger.
Yeah, and so you should have had a conversation, making sure your commitment is secure. Best thing that I can tell you is understand the fact that there are certain things that they can and can't communicate about. That doesn't stop you from communicating written. At the same time, yes, if you call the coach and he identifies who you are and what your grad class is and you're under that acceptable grad class, yeah, he's got to let you know of the rule and he's got to get off the phone. But at the same time, that does not mean that you cannot still email him once a week, letting him know, hey, I know you can't respond to my email, but I just wanted to let you know I'm playing here. This last week I had 11 Ks and went 2 for 3, with 2 doubles. I've got this and this. Hey, by the way, I got my ACT back. I got a 31. By the way, Robin Wilson's the coolest guy I've ever met in my life.
This does not stop you from building that relationship with the coach. This does not stop the communication. It has to continue. You can't just drop it and expect it to pick up in June, 2 years later in your junior year. That's.
And you probably saw a post that I put on Facebook just a little bit ago, and I'm going to reiterate that so that we can kind of slide on and move on from this. 2 things. One, pay attention to our Facebook over the next couple of days, because there's going to be videos, there's going to be articles, and every question that you have under the sun will be answered. Number 2, if you're one of those people that is really freaking out right now, really, you don't, and there's one specific part that you don't know and nobody has talked about the true answer to it and everything, send me a private message, send Mandi a private message. You can private message us. I don't care if you have 25 questions. If there is a question you have, here's the one thing I can guarantee you beyond the shadow of doubt.
Somebody else.
Huh?
Somebody else has that question.
Yes, and Mandi and myself will not attempt to give you an answer if we don't know the answer. What we do have is we have the resources to turn around and tell you, hey, let me see if I can find that out. And being honest with you, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to screenshot that and I'm going to send that to a couple of my resources. And I'm going to get the actual step-by-step verbatim final answer before I turn around and shoot off at the mouth. That's the way me and Mandi are. I would rather you be mad at me for telling you the truth than to be mad at me for telling you a lie. So if you have a question, yes, I know some of y'all are going to ask in the comment section and everything, and some of those we'll be able to address. But if you have a question, if you have 50 questions, private message it to me and Mandi. We'll get it taken care of. Aside from that, has Mary clued in on yet? The next thing, I know some of y'all know, contrary to this phenomenal physique, I know some of y'all know, that's what my degree is an exercise physics. Strength conditioning was my forte. When I first started softball, analyzing kids from a biomechanical standpoint was my forte. And because of that, and just being honest with all y'all, it becomes extremely hard for me to respect somebody that is doing strength conditioning, personal training, anything like that, when they don't do the things they should be doing. On the other hand, that is the reason I'm 100% confident telling you we have the baddest mojo live on our show right now. Mary, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, let me turn it up a little bit.
No.
Greater difficulties.
Yes. No.
Oh, we can hear you. We can hear you now. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. Well, so I know you had a pretty tight schedule and you had a whole bunch going on, so I really, really, really appreciate you changing what you had going on to make sure that you got on here with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So if you don't mind me asking, and I know it's got, just so everybody, I know a lot of people in the softball world know who you are. I know a ton of my prospects love and respect you. It's ironic. You punish them more than anybody when it comes to the workout, but man, if they don't love you and respect you more than most.
I love them too. That's why I can punish them.
So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about kind of how you came to be.
I went to Texas A&M and played softball there, and obviously went through their strength and conditioning program with some of the country's best. And I've just been an athlete my whole life. I played multiple sports and was going to play multiple sports in college, and just stuck with softball, and have just been doing lessons and strength and conditioning for multi-sport athletes ever since.
Is that something that you emphasized yourself before you became a professional?
Multi-sports?
Multi-sport and training for sport and, proper nutrition for the sport and everything.
I mean, absolutely. I know you kind of sent me like a treatment earlier on some different questions about conditioning and what age to start and when did I think it was appropriate. So, just to address that, I think once you start performing, or once you start playing a sport, especially softball, there are going to be some conditioning components that are going to immediately be essential. Core work, you're doing a rotational swing a lot, or you're swiveling on that center. Super important that you're able to maintain the center, which would be core work. We initiate power from the lower body, so legs are always good. But I think starting in a conditioning program as you start to play competitive sports is part of it. They go hand in hand. It's just at what level is the athlete ready? We can keep things really simple in the beginning with core work and planks and a very basic strength and conditioning program, wall sits for the lower body, single leg squats, dips, all things with resistance and no weight. Of course, the scapula is super, super, super important for softball players, everything on the backside, because we have such a tendency to overdevelop the front side with throwing. So it's really important that we get on the back side of the body so we don't have dominance in the quad or on the front side of the shoulder. So strength and conditioning, if you're going to play softball at a competitive level and you want to perform and be ahead of the game, then you should start some type of conditioning program when you start to get serious playing softball.
And kind of hand in hand with that, nutrition is a big part of the training. How important is it compared with the conditioning?
Same thing. You start playing competitive ball, not only is performance-based work on a strength and conditioning program, but also your nutrition is going to have such a huge, they go hand in hand. I mean, your performance will be based on how you fuel yourself. I say this all the time, kids go and get M&Ms and Cokes in between games, and they might have a quick little high, but then they're going to fall off and tire after that. So, nutrition is vital to a strength and conditioning program, and performance, period. It's vital. Take sugar out of the diet. Go ahead.
In relation to the nutrition aspect, one of the things which, I know is probably something you do all the time with the girls, but more often than not, I bet 90% of the time, it seems like the girls are actually undernourished, being, BMR, using basal metabolic rate and everything to calculate exactly what their nutrient intake should be and everything else. But most of these girls are barely taking in 1,000, maybe 1,200 calories, if that. So they're not only well below the standard 1,800, but most of these girls should probably be doing 2,400, 2,800, right?
No doubt. I mean, caloric intake is huge, but what I find more than that is they're taking in so much sugar, and that doesn't do anything to build the components of the muscle. So, I mean, as important as calories are, more than anything, it's about protein, nutrients that'll feed the muscle. Protein and all that type of stuff is extremely important for kids to start intaking when they start on a building program.
Gotcha. So, or do you also, when it comes to you working with your kids and starting them on, that path and everything, do you also, vary their nutrition based on, because obviously, going to school Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday, your nutrition, your daily allowance or what your plan is going to obviously be a whole lot different than by the time Friday comes, instead of your carb percentage being 60%, it's going to kick up to 65 and 70, and then Saturday kick up to 70, 75. If you're showing that weekend and out in the heat and redundancy and stuff, is that something that you're incorporating with them, or in your opinion, is that something that these showcase aged kids should be considering already?
What, supplements?
Yes.
Well, I mean, for me, I feel like you can do the same thing with food, honestly. I mean, supplements, there's a space for them, but are y'all hearing me?
Yeah. Well,
Supplements,
and supplements, that's what I was asking. She said that you were asking. It wasn't supplementation, it was modification, when they're, obviously softball being a year-round sport, there's, there really isn't an off time. So being a year-round sport, obviously what they're eating Monday through Thursday, and they're, if they're targeting 2,000, but it's going to be 60-20-20, split, well then come Friday when they're showcasing, prepping for the showcase that weekend, and then Saturday and Sunday, obviously they're going to have to replace that muscle glycogen being the complex carbs and everything. So when it comes down to that kind of, is that something that you do?
yeah, restoration and eating pre-game and pre-tournaments. That's what you're talking about, like how to split up your food during the week when you're building. I'm just having the hardest time hearing you guys. I'm sorry. It's like it's breaking up so much, but definitely, y'all go in front of me. I mean, definitely you need to eat according to performance for sure. So I'm always kind of saying during the week when you're in your training program, obviously loading up on calories is critical. I mean, I really say eating's like a sport for an athlete. Like you should be fueling all day long. What they say is it's almost like starting a fire in the morning. You gotta get a good base and then fuel throughout the day. But I mean, carbohydrates and all that type of stuff, loading before weekdays to give yourself some extra energy, staying away from sugars. Eating is super important, but again, you run into it's hard to generalize in this particular circumstance because you run into so many kids that don't consume so many different things. So it's based on an individual basis and where the kid is and what the kid's body type is. But I mean, eating certainly critical, game day eating. And if you're talking about like time off and restoration and stuff like that in terms of days off season, I saw that was a big thing that you talked about, off season training and off season consumption. I mean, is there ever an off season these days? I'm just asking. There should be. Recovery is extremely important, but I'm an athlete and I train year round every day, and I try to give myself a day off every single week, which is critical. So a kid's got to know if I'm going to play a tournament Friday, Saturday, Sunday this week, I got to find a day to recover and refuel. That's important, because if we're not able to train and perform at 100%, we're not getting better. So if you're going the next day to practice and you're exhausted and you haven't recovered, then your reps aren't going to be as quick, your explosion's not going to be as dynamic, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely days off season are critical, but there's when you can't be training something. And there's never a time where you can't be fueling your body to build muscle. When you're in the game at this point, at this level, and you're trying to go play college ball and perform with the best athletes in the country, eating, conditioning, recovery, exercise, you have to be crazy focused. This is not a game. They don't give away $100,000 scholarships for nothing. If you make the decision, you're going to have a lot of yeses and a lot of nos, and you're going to give up things. And it's going to be that the ones that go and the ones that go big are going to do all of those things right. Nutrition, recovery, training, all those things, are going to do them all right.
Gotcha. So, kind of, you can see in the comments, there's been a couple of people asking, which is kind of my next point, with how important, which I know, your answer would be, typically what my standard answer would be, that balance of everything is the right way. But the one thing that I seem to get asked a lot is actually not as much about strength training or nutrition. It ends up being about stretching and flexibility and flexibility training and things.
Huge.
So what's your take on that?
Absolutely huge. Not only is it for injury prevention, super critical, but performance based. If you have tight muscles, a tight muscle is a slow muscle, and a tight muscle is a muscle that is at risk. Stretching is critical. Stretching builds speed. Stretching builds explosion. But the thing I always tell people about stretching is to make sure they get circulation going through the muscles before they stretch it. Definitely never want to stretch cold muscles. So I always say give yourself a light jog, a 5-minute jog, a 3-minute jog, some jump roping, something to get blood flow and circulation going through the muscles. And then definitely stretching is critical. And there are some athletes that it's even more important than other athletes. And then another thing that I see in terms of stretching is these days, so many people are front side dominant, quad dominant, that when you start to get that dominance on the front side of the body and you don't have symmetry with the back side of the body, then you are at risk for an ACL. You're at risk for an injury. And so symmetry of the muscle is extremely important, which all comes from stretching. It's probably one of the most important components of good athletes.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head when it comes to talking about the example I always used to give was, to the girls was your muscles are kind of like this plastic pin, in the sense that if I start bending it like this, it's going to snap. But if I heat it up with a lighter, it's going to become a whole lot more moldable and a whole lot more pliable. And so that, obviously, is exactly what you said. What was it you were about saying to me about the detraining, which is what we were talking about, the off season and everything. I know a lot of people have this anticipation that the early, putting a stop on the recruiting and all this stuff is going to stop the year round. It's not going. They're not going to stop watching those other girls, and so naturally, softball is always, thank God, always going to be a year-round sport. So that being said, what do you recommend to your girls about detraining, about, not only decelerating their training, but then turning around and taking those 3 weeks in a row, or whatever the case is, so that their body can completely reset?
Well, I'm an athlete and I really don't too much do the detrain thing. I don't seem like a girl that does that too much, huh? I mean, I like a multi-sport kind of athlete. I do believe in taking weeks off to, fall back in love with the sport, to just recuperate and all that kind of stuff. But you can never let your body get completely out of shape. There are times when you could be in off season and just getting 20-minute runs in 3 or 4 times a week, getting footwork in, getting core work in. It doesn't have to be that you're in season doing plyo dynamics every single day, just beating your body up, doing none of that kind of stuff. But certainly, after softball season, which is a lot of people will be off softball season, at the end of July and August. I mean, take you a couple weeks off in August, but then in July, but then you gotta get back at it. I mean, we're just not in a position for the next 8 to 10 years as athletes. You got to take care of your body with food and stretching and all those types of things. But, to play at this level, off seasons you don't get too much of them. It's not about not training. It's about how to train. and just readjusting their focus maybe and giving them a little bit more cardiovascular work and conditioning, always getting in some jump rope for, some cardiovascular, some quick twitch muscle response. I mean, there's things like that you could be doing 3-4 days a week that would keep your cardiovascular up, that would be minorly invasive on muscles in your body, but they would keep you in good condition. And then the midsection of the body, the core, is a definite all the time, never giving off. You might get a couple days off, but I tell my kids they need to be doing core 6 days a week.
In recent years, because we are in upper body sports, a lot of overhand throwing, swinging, all of that, obviously we're seeing a lot of shoulder, elbow injuries. What do you think some of those causes are, and what are some prevention resources that our prospects and families?
Well, first of all, the core is critical in throwing too. A lot of times people will push the back out in front, or they'll push the elbow so through it'll lead that the ball will drag, and that's what puts such a significant amount of pressure on that labrum. That's why we're seeing so many tears right now. But as a performance coach, I genuinely see, and I work with overhand throwers in multiple sports, and what I think I see more than anything is just that breakdown in the kinetic chain. So you're initiating power in the throw from the floor. It's got to go through the core in the center to be able to get to the arm and into the scapula. So when you have a weak middle, there's too much pressure on the arm because the kinetic chain breaks down. So you don't keep the ball tight to the body. And like I said, the elbow then will lead. So what I think a lot of band work is critical, resistance band, total scapula, a lot of scapula work, crossover symmetry. One video that I recommend on YouTube, and it's called the Iron Scap, and it's on YouTube, and it's band work, but it's all crossover symmetry. That's a great thing, and people can actually just connect it to a chain link fence when they get to a tournament and just warm their arm up there, so that we're building up. What happens is, because we throw so much, we develop the muscles on the front of the shoulder. So what our goal should be is to posture up and get that shoulder back in connection with the ear and develop up that back side of the body, which will save our shoulder and arm. So it's really just about overdevelopment and underdevelopment, keeping muscles symmetric. You can go, Mommy. Keeping those muscles symmetric. That's really critical. You can throw year round. You can throw year round if you throw correctly. And if you're symmetric. You'll see a lot of softball players or baseball players, when you look at them from a posture standpoint, you'll see what appears to almost be like a bow from shoulder to shoulder, like this. And it should be straight across. But because we're so developed here and so underdeveloped on that backside, we put so much pressure, and then the arm drags. That's what happens to the labrum. So it's really about backside development, scapular development, core strengthening, and then doing lots of band work and getting our symmetry in our muscles.
I was a huge believer in crossover symmetry. We had sets that we traveled with. It's something that we did part of our pre-game routine, and we did after, depending on the season that we were in. So I had, in my last 8 years, I had 0 labrum tears and 0 elbow issues because of, I'm a firm believer in the crossover symmetry.
Me too.
Do you think the increased number of labrum tears, and I'm using this, I've researched the crud out of it over, what was it, the last 6 months, 9 months? Maybe even a year, because last year I all of a sudden had 2 different college prospects of mine that are playing in college turn around and tear their labrum. Then, the following month, I had a kid that's an upper level prospect, a junior, I believe she was, and then all of a sudden had an. And since then, it's been every other month a prospect of mine in softball that ends up having this issue, and it's been an issue. She played through the issue, and then all of a sudden. Is it just that sports, orthopedic doctors, sports physicians have become better at identifying the torn labrum, or is it the fact, is it an overuse, or is it just a imbalance?
Well, I don't think, I think overuse. I there's a lot of differing opinions there. And like I said, I believe you can throw the ball if you do it right. But, you know, what I think is what happens is those high-level players like you're talking about, people that were already recruited, committed on the level, they get in high school programs, and their high school programs promote a lot of pushing, a lot of bench press, a lot of front side type of stuff. And any push is bad. We don't push, we pull. And so, you know, when you get softballs that do a lot of overhead pushing, we don't want to do that mechanic as softball players and overhand throwers. We want to do pulling. And so I think that's what happens is not only do we have so much overdevelopment and so little symmetry, but then they go into high school softball programs where they're in weight rooms and they're developing large muscle groups, and then they're forgetting about scapular development and all those types of development. And so then we have dominant front sides, we're pushing, and then no, we can't throw all year long. No, then we do need our arm to get a break. But if we'll develop the backside, a strong backside and a strong middle, for us to throw year round won't be a problem. It won't be a problem. I mean, it's just all about developing the proper machine, a symmetric, strong machine. If you develop a machine, it will work for you.
That makes total sense.
Absolutely.
You ready for the speed round?
Give it to me.
Okay. First question, speed round. When it comes to the ATP CP system, you know, obviously, you know, the adenosine triphosphate, pyridine phosphate, obviously 10 seconds or less. Most people are born, you know, to where 10 seconds max is the maximum they can perform. There's a 50-50 belief out there that you can train to increase that, and there's a 50-50, you know, the other 50% being that pretty much when it comes to ATP, you know, CP system or the number of fast twitch fibers and how they're performing, that you're pretty much stuck with it. What?
Totally disagree. I know you can train it. I see it all the time. See it all the time.
Thank you.
I do that every day. I mean, that's my job. That's what I do. And not only with softball, with all sports, absolutely you can train it. For sure.
That's why you high intensity interval training, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I've had so many college coaches, Coach Lotif, other coaches come into the gym to watch because we only do functional fitness here. We don't rack considerable amounts of weight on women and load spines and those types of things. I don't need to do that. I'm a college softball player. I'm an athlete. I've been training for 20 years. I do not rack any weight, and I'm stronger than anybody that I train against with no weight, no load. It's not necessary. I can do the same thing with resistance, volume, and explosion. I can build muscles that are cut, lean muscles that are fast and dynamic, not slow, big, bulky muscles. We want to develop muscle, but we want them to be cut up and fast.
That makes total sense. So question number 2 on the speed round. Question number 2. Softball being a 10 seconds or less sport, and obviously, you know, power is a huge part of it, but at the same time, speed has kind of become a big name of the game. What's your opinion on coaches that you know, judge their kids based on how they ran their mile and doing these endurance type trainings? What's your opinion?
I mean, that's just, for me, if I'm a coach looking at that kind of stuff, that's just guts. You know, I'm just looking at their guts. Who's going to finish? Who's going to finish? I mean, to me, that's all it is. Like, let me put you through something that challenges you from a physical aspect, and let me see where you're going to fall in the ranks. For me, as a coach, I'll put you up there on a killer just to see what kind of guts you got.
I like that. I never thought about it like that, but you just totally changed. Yeah, that makes total sense.
But, I mean, I had a coach, Adrian Gregory at Tech. She used to make the kids run a mile at the first with a medicine ball, and they were like chained together. And I had kids on the team, and they were like whining about it, but I knew for a fact she was just doing it to get rid of the weak ones. And good for her.
Okay. Third question of the speed round. Disagreement a couple of days ago ended up leading to probably 40, 50 different high-level hitting coaches, 20 college coaches, all disagreeing about this one particular thing. So it started off with basically us telling girls, you know, hey, there is no such thing as a switch hitter in softball anymore. You know, this, that, and the other, you need to pick one side and roll with it depending on what's best for you, and it doesn't matter which one, this, that, and the other. And one guy ended up making a comment saying that 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that he had done a hitting program with Jenny Finch's dad, and that Jenny Finch's dad talked about training both sides so that it would create muscular balance and all this other stuff. And there was this hour-long argument going on between these people on Facebook. I got my coffee and literally laughed watching the argument. Your opinion on having to train both sides, just hitting, not
Symmetry. Symmetry is super important. Balance is important. Center, all that kind of stuff is important. But no, I do not think you hit on both sides. That's just my opinion. I'm from the old school. Let's perfect one side. If you're going yard every single time on one side and you're hitting dingers every time, go ahead, switch. Go ahead. But ain't nobody got it down like that perfected. You need to perfect your craft, get on your side. We can work symmetry and balance other ways. I don't need that I don't need an extra mechanic and skill to have to perfect.
I agree. I agree with that 110. Okay, final stamp. In the speed round. Real big one. Let's say I was going to turn around and tell every one of the prospects that watch this video and every one of the prospects that watch this video that that they need to begin focusing on training outside of just their practices and their lessons, that they need to begin strength training, conditioning, nutrition. So the key, just quick hitter, what age is the cutoff for how early, should I tell a 12-year-old or should I wait for 14? Second question is, what is their next step? Is their next step to contact you? Is their next step to go to a certain website? Is their next step to, start doing Zumba and dancing around guitars? What is it?
Well, your next step, if you have any questions, you can contact me on Facebook or Instagram, and you have that information. So I'm on Instagram at Mary Knows Speed. But the next step is, no, it's never too young to start training. Like I said, it's the type of training that you do that's just age specific and age appropriate. But certainly get a jump rope. That's a great training tool for everybody. Everybody needs to know how to jump rope, and I'm blown away by the kids that don't know how to do that this day. It's ridiculous. But it helps to develop rhythm. It helps to develop the back side of the body. It helps to develop the lower leg, which is all speed related. Every 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old in America that's an athlete could be jump roping, doing ladder work, and doing core. She went off.
Well, guess that was abrupt.
Yep.
Looks like we might have lost her.
Yep.
Well, perfect time. Final question. So, Mary, when you do see this again, thank you so much for being on. Those of y'all that don't know, the first time I found out about Mary, she was working the Jim Hewitt's college softball camp down in Covington, Louisiana. And as my prospects walked in, they introduced her to who they called Scary Mary. And that intrigued the heck out of me. And me in my educational background, of course, all of a sudden I'm like, the person probably doesn't know what they're doing. Tell her not to listen. Well, one of the parents, who's a close buddy of mine, ends up videoing the whole lot of it and sends it to me. I'm like, I love this lady. A lot of the philosophies she was applying were the philosophies I would apply. And it's not that, what I would apply is golden or anything. It's just, I have the utmost respect for people who have the education to talk about what they're talking about.
Well, and I just love talking to people that are more knowledgeable than me about a certain subject. I'm a business major. I have an MBA, so kinesiology and nutrition and all this stuff, all those words that you guys were talking about, I didn't get any of that because those weren't layman's terms at all. But so I just enjoy hearing, somebody smarter than me in this subject.
What was that? What was that? There's a first time for everything, ladies and gentlemen. And luckily my wife is in here, so she did hear that too. Aside from that, guys,
Next show.
Next show is
May 2nd.
May 2nd.
Wednesday, May 2nd. Same time?
6:30.
Same place?
Same face. Otherwise, stay tuned for the next couple of days. Like I told you, if you have questions, I know probably 10 or 12 of y'all already have. If you have questions, send Mandi or myself a private message on Facebook. If you have our cells, send us a text. We will make sure and get to it. Just understand, you know, there's already 70, 75 texts and emails waiting to be responded to. So go ahead and send us a message if you have a question about some of this early recruiting, you know, legislation and everything. And make sure that you pay attention to our Facebook page over the next couple of days, because once we get everything finalized, we're going to be ready to roll, and we're not going to leave you in the dust. Appreciate y'all being on, and we'll see you at the next turn.
Thanks, guys.